When you know, you know. That's what we usually hear in the startup world. But Nina Mohanty, founder of Bloom Money, tells me that when you know too much. Growing up in Silicon Valley, Nina saw startup life through a different lens, watching her entrepreneurial parents go through the highs and lows of what it takes to really build a business, created this fear inside of her when she realized she probably isn't going to do it herself. Little did she know, after building a successful career in corporate life, she was going to leave it all behind her to start Bloom Money. Let's dive into what it really takes to build a business through Nina's eyes. And before we dive right in, I wanted to ask you, what is the craziest thing that's happened to you this month?
Well, we're halfway through June. June is also my birthday month. I am a Gemini, so I'm like notoriously chaotic.
Yeah.
I think the craziest thing that happened to me this month was actually this weekend. I went to go see Jacinda Ardern speak on her book tour. And actually a mentor of mine gave me the ticket. And so I expected, she was kind of like, I've got this event and do you want the ticket? I can't make it anymore. And I was like, sure, fine, no problem. And so I went thinking I'd be like up in the heavens or whatever. And I get in and I'm like looking for my seat. I'm like, this is really weird. Like I can't seem to find it. It's literally first row. And so I'm like, wow, this is incredible. First row, like right there, I can see Jacinda, like as she walks in. I shouldn't call her Jacinda. I should be much more the Right Honorable or whatever her title is. And so, she's so humorous, so lovely, amazing, doing this publicity tour for her book, a different kind of power. And there was, the moment when you feel like a politician or someone on stage is speaking directly to you. Mm-hmm. And I was convinced that she was just locking eyes with me, just like, Nina, like speaking to me.
Was she making the eye contact as well?
I felt like she was, right? And so I was adamant. I'm like, whoa, Jacinda Ardern is like speaking
Guys,
to
are you seeing
me.
This right now?
I'm just like, this is crazy. And afterwards, the lights come up and I get up and I like stretch a bit and turn behind me. And who was it but Malala is sat behind me. And so I went, oh, she definitely wasn't looking at me. she was looking at Malala for sure. But it made me go, oh, okay, how did I get these tickets that are better than where Malala sat? And also, how was I sandwiched between these two incredible women? Just like, on a Saturday. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. So good crazy.
Good crazy.
Yeah.
Brilliant. When I asked that question, what's the craziest thing that's happened to you in this week or this month? It's because I never know what founders are going to say because sometimes they're always clocked on. Yeah. So it's either going to be something that happened in the office or something that happened in their day-to-day, but you use something that happened on a weekend when you were doing something outside of work.
Yes.
Wow. So
rare of me, actually.
And then, so I guess before we go into your whole foundations of lifestyle with being a founder, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and Bloom Money?
Yeah. So, where do I start? I'm Nina. I'm the founder of Bloom Money, and I guess I should backtrack and say that I'm the daughter of immigrants, and that is a large part of my identity. So my father's from India, my mother's from Taiwan, not to be confused with Thailand. People often think that I'm Thai when I tell them that I'm Taiwanese. No. Mm-hmm. Tiny island off the coast of China. And I grew up in the Silicon Valley. So born and raised in the Silicon Valley. My parents were kind of OG dot-com boom engineers. And I grew up surrounded by, people that worked at Sun Microsystems. And I mean, a good friend of mine, actually his dad is like the founder of Marvell, and like Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, like we knew him in the community because he's Taiwanese. So I grew up around tech and therefore naturally decided to run away as far and as fast as possible from tech. And I came over to the UK working for the Obama administration. So my first love was civil service. It remains so. And it was an incredible experience working at the US Embassy back when it was in Mayfair, but also just incredibly bureaucratic, which makes sense. It's government. Mm. But I basically did a career pivot, did a master's degree, and during that time fell into the world of fintech back when Monzo was Mondo and Revolut had just raised their seed round. So it was a very exciting time to be there at the center of it all. And it just made me fall in love with fintech. The propensity, the capacity to build healthier financial lives for the everyday person just really spoke to me. And so since then, my life has been in fintech. Have had the opportunity to work at some really cool places like MasterCard, Starling Bank, Bud, Klarna. I always joke that my exes are more famous than I am. We're working on that. But
You got me laughing. There you go. One, maybe a few in the audience.
Yeah. But my story with Bloom is rather interesting, especially because we're having a conversation about being a founder, and I never, ever, ever, ever thought I was going to be a founder. And that's a common theme throughout my career was I've always been a really strong operator, and I'm really good at executing someone else's vision. I never thought it would be me that would set the vision, set the roadmap, me be the one to go and build something of my own. And so Bloom was, I often say, I have given a talk before that I call Notes from a Reluctant Founder, because I think I'm very much a reluctant founder. And I was perplexed why people were not building for immigrant communities. And so Bloom Money is a fintech company serving immigrant communities. We focus on the 80% of the wallet that is not sent abroad, because most of the innovation in financial services is about remittances and sending money home. And there's a cultural reason that we do that, right? And, my family, we still send money home to India. But actually, there's 80% of the wallet, which here in the UK accounts for £118 billion, that no one is building for. And no one is building culturally relevant products for people who are straddling countries, if not continents. And so I actually was I say reluctant because I was very reluctant. Bloom actually started as a PhD proposal. I leave that part out when I speak to VCs because it's weird. I feel like a lot of VCs don't like it when you're like too smart or like in pursuit of academia. But I went and spoke to my director of studies for my master's program, and I said, I've put this research proposal together. What do you think? And he read through it and he kind of said, listen, this seems great. Do a PhD when you're 50. This feels like a business. You're the fintech expert. Why don't you go build something? So I then took that, and you would think like, okay, then she went and incorporated Bloom. No, I then went and shopped it around to other fintech companies. And I said, hey, can I come build this with you? And they kind of went, this is interesting, not really on a roadmap. Maybe some other time. Maybe, let's circle back in a year or two. And I kind of just went, but the need is here, and it's now, and the pain is acute, and someone needs to build this. And so finally one day I woke up, and we were working remotely because we were kind of in that awkward working from home, not quite back in the office, not even post, like through COVID's time in 2021. And one day I just woke up and said, it's time. And I hit send on that resignation email, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. There's a lot to unpack there. So at the start, you said you grew up in Silicon Valley. And then you went on to explain that you never wanted or thought you would be a founder. That's very interesting because you're around this energy. Everybody says the era is so different. You're hearing people talk about their dreams. They're voicing it into existence. And then you came to the UK, and then you ended up discovering your founder journey. Yeah. But why was it that you think you didn't want to be a founder or didn't have that thought in your...
It's an interesting one. I've only written a few angel checks in my life, and people always make fun of me because I've not written a single angel check to a fintech founder. And I think there's something about when you know too much. So I think, I won't say traumatized, that's a very strong word, but growing up in the Silicon Valley, my father is an entrepreneur many times over, and he is also a brilliant operator. And he had multiple startups that some, went a bit further to Series A and beyond. Some of them, barely got off the ground. So I have seen the full range, but through the lens of a child, which makes it even worse somehow. So I remember when my father's board voted to replace him. I remember when my father and my mother were fighting, screeching at each other, because my dad asked my mom if we could remortgage the house so he could put the money into his startup. I remember watching his co-founder basically steal the IP and run off with it, right? So I've seen all of that through the lens of my father and the pain that it caused him and more broadly our entire family. I watched my mother, who is a brilliant QA engineer, worked at various companies that over time became Hewlett-Packard for decades. I watched her hold down this, 9-to-5 job, although once upon a time it was startup land. But once you got into the Hewlett-Packard machine, it was like, corporate. And I watched the stress that it caused her to be the primary breadwinner. So I think, yes, it's inspiring, and yes, it's fantastic to know people building really cool things and to feel like the sky is the limit. But when you are faced in your own household with the day-to-day reality of what it is to be a founder, I think subconsciously it was just in me that this was never going to be for me. And also, ironically, so because my parents are immigrants, there's this kind of like immigrant trope that immigrant children are allowed to be doctors or lawyers or engineers. And I didn't want to be any of those things. And you'll notice founder is certainly not in that list either. So I thought that, diplomacy or government work, civil service, was kind of like a happy medium, because my parents certainly weren't going to let me be a ballerina. So this was kind of the path that I took. And I never thought, never ever thought. And even when I moved to London, was really happy in corporate life, to be honest. Like, I'm such a type A, eldest daughter, immigrant child, where if you tell me these are the rules and this is what you need to do to get to the next level, this is what you need to do to excel, I'm going to do that because it's laid out for me. I love standardized testing. I mean,
really?
No one loves standardized testing, but like, it's clear. You know what
Don't
you need
mind
to
it.
do,
Yeah.
right? You just need to really like memorize it, like stuff.
Yeah.
And then not pass out literally, but pass the test. So for me, corporate life made so much sense because it was like, this is how you climb the ladder. The path is very clear. Whereas startup life as an operator, and certainly founder life, is just full of uncertainty. And that is terrifying.
Mm-hmm. But you did it anyway. Yeah, here we are.
For my
No,
sins.
but it's so interesting. And first of all, it's probably why I don't like math, because actually maybe I'm not a type A person, because when it's like, here's the problem, here's the equation, this is what you have to do to solve it. I'm like, but why? Or like, what do you mean? Like, this is what you have to do, and go on it that way. But as you listed off all of those realities of startup life, and watching it from the lens of a child is so interesting too, because, well, first of all, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and I'm now the only one with a 9-to-5 writing about people who don't have 9-to-5s. So it's quite interesting in the perspective where it's like, I'm going to go to university, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to have the stability.
Yeah.
And then now I'm just talking about people who don't always have
stability.
that stability. Yeah, so that's a very interesting perspective.
I love that.
And also watching it through the lens of a child. Someone the other day told me that one of the biggest reasons that she went into entrepreneurship is because she had naivety. She didn't realize how hard it was going to be. And so thinking of it from the opposite spectrum is knowing how difficult it's going to be. Maybe you wouldn't even start, but you did start. So walk me through how, was it terrifying? Was it scary? Like sending in your resignation, you must have known that this is going to be the thing to do.
Yeah.
But what was that like going through your head, those first steps, making the leap?
So one of the starting point of being a founder for me is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And I get a lot of folks connecting with me on LinkedIn, or I'll meet them at events and they'll say, I have this idea. And I think, that's fantastic. Tell me about the problem. And I actually assign them a bit of homework. They'll ask me for coffee. And I'm usually happy to meet people for coffee, but I'll assign them and say, give me a one-pager on the problem that you're trying to solve. it's actually hilarious, the number of people who will not do that. And that's a great way to kind of sift out people who are actually serious about what they're trying to build. But I became obsessed with this problem. So the lore of Bloom Money goes that I was speaking to anyone that would speak to me. It actually really, the first conversation I think that triggered it was I was speaking to our house cleaner. So we're very, very privileged growing up in the Silicon Valley. And we have had an amazing house cleaner named Martha since I can remember. She's watched me grow up, like since I could crawl, basically. And she's Guatemalan. And my Spanish is absolutely rubbish for someone that grew up in California. But every time I'm home now, because I've been away for the past 12, 13 years now, I'll make her a pot of coffee and we'll have this like broken, like Spanglish conversation. And she's very, very dear to me. And one day I happened to be home for Christmas, I think, and her niece was with her. And we started having a chat and I was like, hey, how are things going? I know that you were applying for community college and then you wanted to go do communications. Like, how is that? Great to see you here. You're helping your aunt. And she said, oh yeah, we couldn't afford it in the end, so I've just been helping Martha out. And it was the biggest slap in the face because I was very quickly met with the privilege that I hold, right? Not just, there's so many layers to unpack there, right? I just kept wondering, why is it that my parents were able to get me here? And what was the difference? If we control for geopolitics, if we control for socioeconomic, well, we can't actually, and that was the main issue. And then I came back to London and started to speak to anyone that would speak to me. So I was speaking to like the security uncles, at the front of the building. I was speaking to the cleaners in offices. I was like lurking in Facebook groups, speaking to aunties and being like, hey auntie, tell me about how you're managing your money. It was like so creepy, but I was paying people for their time because it was very important to me. And I just wanted to understand, like, how are you managing your money? And then the Post-its come in. So it was very Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like me, where it was like red string, like
insert.
Yes. And it was just like Post-its everywhere. And I had just moved back to the UK January of 2020. So like a few months before lockdown. So I just moved back into a flat that was completely empty. There was nothing on the walls.
But
and
Post-its.
Yeah, it became a perfect kind of wall of Post-its. And so that day that I woke up to send my resignation, it was a mix of things, actually. I think my entire career, I've always, in hindsight, you connect the dots, and I realized that I've always been a bit of an individual contributor, and I've never really fit into one, like, category. So I have never really ever just been, like, business development. I've never just been marketing. I've never just been, like, when I came back working for Klarna, I did everything from supporting the compliance team to doing marketing audits to working with a product team. And I kind of got to be this, like, tentacle octopus type lady, Ursula, if you will, and just do lots of little picky bits. And I think that at that point in my career, I remember speaking to my boss and being like, I'm really bored.
Give me some more.
Yeah, truly, like,
yeah.
It's a problem if your team is saying, I'm bored, right?
Yeah.
And so I was being paid very well, shout out to Klarna, but, I wasn't learning, I wasn't doing anything, I was proud of the work that I was putting out, but I felt like I could be used more. And then that collided with this deep, deep need to solve this problem. And so I was terrified. And I didn't tell my parents for months. So
After you quit.
After I quit, I told a few friends. I had saved up about a year's worth of personal runway. And I had already also lined up a few, like, consulting freelance gigs because I am actually very, very risk averse. And I was like, okay, I don't know if or when I'll be able to raise money. I know that the statistics are abysmal, and that's from the sidelines. I can't even really say at the time what it's like to be a female founder. I'm a woman of color. We know it's even worse for women of color. So I was kind of like, you need to have this like cushion to get you through. I had already kind of started scouting out people that I wanted to have part of the team. I played the long game with our now CTO, like courted him for a year to just get him on side. And the day I sent the email, I woke up sweating. I'm like a really sweaty person. I'm always sweating.
And
like I'm sweating right now.
To be clear, it's really warm in this room.
It's really warm in this room, but like I'm sweating right now.
And we're drinking warm coffee.
We are.
What are you going to do? Very contradictory.
I'm a sweaty person. I woke up sweating. And I just kind of went like, just do it. Just do it. And so I was like, click send. And my boss immediately was like, can we have a quick chat? Like on Slack. Yeah. He's like, I'm really surprised. I was like, why? How can you be surprised?
I told you I was bored. No,
yes, exactly. And then I had another, it kind of worked its way around the teams at Klarna. I had another, like head of team, the core banking team, like reach out and say, hey, why don't you come like build the Klarna debit card and like the debit account with us? And I was like, come on, dude. Like I told you for so long. I was like hungry for more and no one wanted to put more on my plate. So it wasn't to spite Klarna or anything or that I was unhappy there necessarily, but it was the perfect confluence of things. And I what is it that they say now? Like, feel the fear and do it anyway. I felt that fear. I woke up sweating. I felt the fear. I was terrified. I didn't tell my parents almost for a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were just like, how's work? I was like, yeah, great.
Technically you are working.
Yeah. I was
just
like,
not
yeah, it's cool. Just doing some product development.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. So it was perhaps not the typical founder journey.
Yeah. Well, I think it's my biggest takeaway there is so many people tell me that in order to be a founder, you have to be okay with uncertainty because like you said before, everything is uncertain.
Yeah.
So it's like, do you think you have to be okay with, like, are you okay with uncertainty now? Or is it something that you still, like, struggle with? Like, do you still wake up sweating when there's a nerve-wracking decision to make? Or, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do. I do that as well. Yeah. But it's one of those things
We're just sweaty people.
Yeah. Founders are sweaty people.
We're just sweaty people. I really hope that that's, like, the pull quote. Like, we're just sweaty people. I'm going to get a sweatshirt that says that now.
Yeah. DF merch.
Yeah. Amazing. Let's see. Do you have to be comfortable with uncertainty? No.
Excellent. I was waiting for that answer.
Do you need to be able to mitigate it and cope with uncertainty? Yes. So I mentioned that I made sure that I had a little cushion, a year's personal runway to pay my rent, to pay my bills, to feed myself, right? That was me mitigating for risk. Getting those freelance things kind of in the pipeline. Actually, it's hilarious. I earned more in that year than I ever have because I, like, word of mouth and people just kept hiring me for freelance things while I was building Bloom. I think to this day, though, there is no such thing as uncertainty in life, but certainly not in a startup. And so every single day you're getting a rejection from an investor, from a candidate that you really wanted to hire, from a partner, from, you know, a huge RFP that you've just done. So you just have to get comfortable with enduring it. Endure feels like such a negative word, like a really negative connotation, but I do think that you have to lean into it, endure it, and you mitigate the way that you know how. And for me, that's mitigating for risk. I met a really interesting professor, I think from the University of like Frankfurt, in this tiny town in Greece, so random. And as I said, I'm a former academic, so I'm very like swotty and nerdy in that way. And he has been studying risk and risk appetite between founders or within founders. And he said to me, it's not that women founders are more risk averse, they're more risk aware. And that's true for women in investing, right? In general, it's not that we're risk averse. We're realistic about the risk that
Mm-hmm.
exists, and we are aware of it, and therefore we want to mitigate for those things. And there's like, we could go on a whole other podcast episode talking about the expectations, the reality, the caretaking roles that women have to take. Because if I see one more post of a LinkedIn, like on LinkedIn, of a male founder being like, so grateful for my real silent co-founder, my wife, and you're like, oh my God, like, right, the person that's like cooking you dinner, taking care of your kids, like all of that, so you can just be at the office more, like
doing the 24/7.
yeah, I would love to have a silent co-founder too. I'm looking for a wife. I'm looking for a wife.
There you go, guys. She's open.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting. And also I was just writing about kind of like founder habits and founder rituals and routines.
Ooh.
And it's interesting because someone had mentioned it was something very small, like the coffee he has in the morning, and he gives himself 10, 15 minutes to have that coffee to
Ooh.
himself before doing anything.
Yeah.
And the way it was described was it was just a token of certainty and a day of uncertainty.
Oh,
So
I
I
love
think it's something, like even me, I like to go to the gym because it's something that I know I will have to myself every day, no matter what happens. And so I'm just curious if there's anything you do in your lifestyle to cope with that certainty, even if you don't, or uncertainty, even if you don't realize it,
That's a really good
outside of your
question.
business work.
Yes. So there's a few things. I also have a coffee ritual. Coming from the States, from California specifically, I'm a huge Phil's coffee girl. And so whenever someone's coming to visit from the States, I'm like, can you just bring a bit more coffee for me? But I, every morning, do the whole filter, like, so wanky, right? I'm like, we just do a little V60 coffee and like...
Takes a little bit to brew.
Yeah. And then I also listen to both The Guardian Today in Focus and the New York Times Daily every day. So I try to... I think I used to do it because I'm a foreign policy nerd and that was my previous life in civil service. I do care about what's happening in the world and current events, but I realize now in hindsight that it was my way of rooting myself in a larger picture. So while I'm really, really nervous about, a pitch or something's happening with a team, it just helps contextualize there are other things happening in the world. It's very much like that meme of like, there's people dying, Kim.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I lost my earring. It's like, Kim, there are people dying. So in that way, it's very grounding. And then the other thing is I am addicted to One Rebel, the Reshape classes there. So it's like a HIIT exercise. If anyone's done berries, it's like berries but better, in my opinion. But I religiously go. And it's where I clear my head. It's 45 minutes where my phone is in the locker. It's just me, the treadmill, the box with the weights. And I think something about working out, I think there's a reason that founders like latch onto working out and fitness, because it's like that thing that you can actually see the incremental progress. Whereas with a startup, it's like a long, long journey. But if I go for a month and I'm consistent using a certain weight, maybe next month I feel more comfortable using a heavier weight, or I can run just a little bit faster. And I think that's why I love it so much, beyond just the meditative quality of like turning my brain off, having someone yell at me, get on that treadmill, you can do better, you can go faster. I love it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think a lot of people, especially in those early days of starting a business, you focus so much on the business, it's really difficult to put some time for yourself because you feel guilty almost. But
always,
it's just the argument that a healthy founder equals a healthy business, right? Like you have to take care of yourself because you are the business.
I sleep a lot too, by the way.
Okay.
I love sleep. Like, I know that there's this, oh God, I really hate founder hustle porn.
Yeah.
I cannot stand it. People are like, oh yeah, I went to sleep at 3, waking up at 5, like bullet
doing
coffee.
So good.
Oh. Mate, I need like 8 hours of sleep a night. I'm a baby. I need to be tucked in bed at 10:30. I'm gonna just like take my magnesium and just sleep like a baby. I cannot, because I know myself. I'm not gonna function well the next day if I don't.
It's
sleep
cognitive
well.
rest.
Exactly. And I actually, the Jacinda Ardern thing I went to, she said that she used to kind of say like, oh, I don't need that much sleep, and like kind of pretend like everything's fine, I don't need this rest. And then she was not accosted, but a man in an airport came up to him and was like, how are you sleeping? She said, oh, I'm fine, I don't really need that much sleep. And he said, no, you do, and let me tell you what's happening with your cognitive ability. And he's a sleep doctor, basically. So I'm a big fan of rest. I love a nap. Like a Sunday afternoon nap is the best thing ever. But I sleep a lot too. Mm-hmm. I'm not sorry about it.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned the like incremental progress that you get when you go to the gym, and that it's really difficult to find that in a startup or see it when it happens. Yeah. I just started a new project where, it's about 3 months old, where we speak with founders every month for 12 months. Ooh. And we do the same question. So have you ever seen the Billie Eilish interview with Vanity Fair? She does it once a year, but they're at 8 years. And so it was kind of like the same similar concept, but in a founder life, like so much happens in 12 months. So much happens month to month.
So true. Yeah.
And I'm just going to go ahead and assume like it's very hard to reflect on that as it happens. Like, so it's basically like a forceful, here's 20 minutes every month on the first, reflect on what just happened in the past 30 days. And so it'll be really interesting to see that progress over a 12-month time or like a 6-month period.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the questions we ask is, what does success look like to you on that first interview? And then on the 6th one, we'll ask it again, and on the 6th month, and then again at 12. And so back to Bloom, I'm curious as to like what success was when you laid out, like when you started, and whether that's changed today.
Oh, this is a really good question. Actually, it's interesting. When I first started Bloom, I did a monthly investor update. First, it started out as like friends, supporters, and then it became an investor update. And it was every month, without fail, like whatever is happening in the world. If I didn't have Wi-Fi, I was like hanging out like a window. And, like, oh. And to be fair, I switched to a quarterly cadence now to our investors, but it's funny because that both worked to remind myself how much progress we've made in just a month, but also it turns out when you say you're going to do what you're going to do at the time and date that you say you're going to do it, that's really impressive to investors. And so when people do diligence calls with my earliest investors, they're like, oh, and she does this investor update, and it, like, without fail, she's relentless about it, and we know what's happening in the business, and we never have to ask because we know already. So I'm very communicative in that way.
So is that something you decided to do?
Was
your idea?
To do.
Oh, well, great minds think alike.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, but I mean, now it's on a quarterly cadence, and as we grow, it's kind of cool to see things quarter by quarter, but I still kind of try and check in month on month. I mean, I try to. I have no other choice. I'm literally like day to day, week to week, right? I think success when I first started Bloom was about, let's empower, if we can empower even like one family to think about their long-term wealth, that's success. And it was kind of more on the individual level. So early on it was, how do we make sure that people know that they can move beyond just providing for 2 households and remittances, but actually start building wealth for themselves here? And that was, that's success. We can help people start thinking about their financial future. Great. I think success now is a little, it's in the same vein, but actually it's this realization that I had in the past year that there's success now is more about the collective. So I've been thinking about this, and it's kind of been uncovered over time, but I now say that we are uncovering the $1 trillion plus immigrant economy. And it's more about the fact that there are so many industries where we know nothing about immigrants. So we don't know how much they're earning, where they're spending their money from the financial services perspective, but even for health outcomes, for example, or education outcomes. There's so many things that we don't know. And so now it's actually about uncovering it for the collective instead of just the individual. And so that's what success looks like. And so whether that is proving that immigrants have money and one day having billions of assets under management, that's a proof point that not only do immigrants earn money, but they have it and are building wealth. Or if it's we're able to, over time, make clinical trials and health more equitable, that will be success too.
Mm-hmm. And as you see those goalposts move, do you think there's anything you would have done differently if you could go back and do it all again?
Ooh, so many things.
Well, one of the main questions I do like to ask is if you knew how hard it was, would you do it? But I already think I know your answer because you just talked about knowing how hard it was before you did it. Yeah. So now it's the, would you do anything differently?
What would I do differently? Gosh, it's such a weird one. I think a lot about our funding stack. I think it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do is raise money. I'm not someone that feels comfortable lying. I can embellish, but I do not feel comfortable lying. I think also I have a very expressive face, so like my face just gives it away. And I think it's not that people are lying when they fundraise, but they're telling a version of reality that perhaps they believe. But I actually lost out on a term sheet once because I refused to artificially inflate our revenue numbers for the IC. I could not do that. And I knew that if I did, I would be making a rod for my own back because they would hold me to those numbers. So if I could change anything, I'd probably be like a white man. That would be really cool. That'd be fun, I think.
Would it be fun?
Well, I don't know. Like, I hear things are great for them. Maybe. No, I mean,
hard work pays off though.
Hard work pays off. Listen, I have nothing against white men. Like, I've, for whatever reason, like, have only ever dated white men. I love them. They're fantastic. Like, men are great, fine, but like,
you heard it here first.
Like, you heard it here first. White men are great. But no, like, it's
sweaty white man.
I'm a sweaty lady who loves white men. Okay, fantastic. Don't tell my dad. This is so embarrassing. But I think it would have made the journey a bit easier. And I think it's a shame because we miss out on so many of the voices that should be heard, that need to be heard, that are building really interesting things. So what would I change? Actually, probably nothing. And actually, oh my God, I can't believe I'm about to quote Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift.
Love Taylor Swift. I'll say it.
She gave an interview and someone asked, like, what advice would you give to your younger self? And she said, I actually wouldn't give advice to my younger self because it would have changed, like, the course of my life, and I needed to live those things to become the person that I am today. So similarly, I don't think that I would go back and change anything because I would not be where I am today. And in the academic world, we call that path dependency. These things wouldn't have happened unless something else had happened. But I would give advice to others that, you know, it's helpful to think through things like fundraising. It's helpful to have a really good support system and the rest of it. Yeah.
Right. I love how you got to that answer because I was expecting that answer, but I like how it kind of just went back and forth. White man to the this and then that. Yeah. Because the thing is you do, like, when you think about, like, past reflections like that, you're like, well, I would do this differently because that sucked, or this and this and that. But ultimately, because it's easier doesn't always mean it's better.
Yes.
And sometimes
that's such a great way to put it.
Where you are today, it wouldn't be that case if you didn't have that. So that said, is there any one big value or belief that you have held close to you on your founder journey from day one? Within yourself or Blue Money? Other than not lying, because I actually really like that point.
Yeah.
That you can't lie. That's a good value to hold.
Well, that's definitely a big one. I think two things. One is customer is always right. I think maybe because I'm American as well, like, we're always taught, like, customer's king.
Oh yeah. There was gonna be one question where I asked you what was your first job and what did you learn from it, and mine was definitely being a waitress.
Yeah.
And the customer is always right. So that made me think of the
always right. Well, and like in the US we have such a strong service culture. I have been a waitress, barista, bartender, all of those things. So I have huge respect for people in service work and hospitality. But the customer is always right. And it seems very obvious, but I think many founders forget it. And people often ask me, especially investors, like potential investors when I'm fundraising, will say, well, how do you know that? And I say, because I asked our customers. And it doesn't need to be in a, methodological study, and it doesn't need to be like super regimented. But my favorite part of my day is speaking to customers. I love jumping into customer support tickets. I often will call customers if they're having issues and just chat with them. Some of those are the best conversations that we've had in terms of our product development. And it also builds a lot of trust when you have the humility to pick up the phone and say, listen, we were wrong and we want to make it right, and how can we do that? And which is very important for us in particular, because we serve immigrant communities who are already very skeptical and discerning about financial services. I think the second thing is look after your team. And this one is something that was never like something I went into founder life holding dear, but we have been through shitstorms that you could not imagine the past 2 years. Fintech funding dropped off a cliff. Consumer fintech, no one wants to touch to this day, right? Chime went public last week. Klarna put theirs on hold. We're looking for a potential Revolut IPO, a Monzo IPO next year. And actually consumer fintech is killing it at the moment, and yet no one wants to invest in it. Then you add to that like everything else, the political maelstrom around immigration. And like, so we are at this confluence again, this perfect storm of raising money is so difficult, and giving your team what they want or what they need is so difficult. I mean, there was a time where I literally sat there for a few minutes and debated in my head, like, our data scientist is asking for a medium subscription that costs £19 a month. And I was like, oh God, can we do this? Like, can we afford that? That's a shitty place to be, because I want our team members to be furthering their development, thinking, and all the rest of it. So for me to be in a position where I can't immediately say, yes, of course, go do that, is a failure on my part. But one of the things that from the get-go was important to me was to always treat our team well. I hope that if you were to speak to any member of our team, they would say, sign me up, I'd do it again. We have this joke with our first engineer hire, our front-end engineer, Dan. Every time he gets to a year mark, he goes, want to see me do it again? Like, yes, please. He's 3 years in, and like, how lucky are we to have a really great engineer that's stuck with us for over 3 years now? And you typically get an engineer these days for like, 18 months to 24 months? So for him to be with us for that long is such a compliment. And I've always just treated the team like they are adults. A few years ago, actually it was like around Christmas time, I said to them, listen, we have 2 more months runway, and this means that I can pay you till February. If you want to start looking for a job, let me know. I will personally help you find somewhere to land. I will use my network to place you. Our CTO said he would use his network as well. And it flies in the face of conventional wisdom for startup founders, which is do not tell your team when shit hits the fan. But having been at a startup previously and living paycheck to paycheck because I was paid so little in exchange for equity, I knew that it wouldn't be fair for me to dictate their financial situation. I don't know what financial obligations and responsibilities they have. And it turns out a few of the people on our team have caretaking responsibilities. So for me to say, listen, here's where we are, and if you need help finding a place to land, whatever, tell us. Not a single person left. So take care of your team, and the customer is always right.
Yeah. Well, transparency as well. if you're building the right team as a startup, surely those team members want it to succeed as much as you do, like literally equally with that founder level.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're not telling them when things are hitting the fan, then how are they going to work harder to make sure it doesn't hit the fan? Because then they're just working at their own pace, thinking everything's fine and dandy.
Exactly.
And when it's not, it's really interesting perspective. But yeah, direct transparency, I think, would be...
Lots of transparency.
And then, so going back, like, do you think there's one thing that you need to have to be a founder? We talked a little bit about being okay with uncertainty or being able to mitigate uncertainty. I mentioned naivety before. You didn't have too much of the naivety. You knew exactly what you were getting into when you did
I thought
it.
I did. And turns
but still,
out
there's some surprises.
It was the tip of the iceberg. But yeah.
Do you think there's any one characteristic or trait a founder needs to be a founder?
So there's a few words as you were asking that popped in my head. It was like a word cloud, and it was like grit and resilience and perseverance. And I do actually think all of those things are necessary, but if we kind of take a page from the product handbook, what is the North Star? I think it all ladders up to a North Star of conviction. Conviction in what you're building, in maybe not even in what you're building, but conviction in the problem that you're trying to solve, rather. You must have a deep, profound, unwavering conviction that this is a problem that needs to be solved. And the product might change, and the team might change, and the investors might change, but you have to have conviction. And if you don't have conviction in yourself, no one else can. And I say conviction because I think all the other things kind of trickle down from that. I have tried to do a lot of things in my life. There was like a very ill-informed attempt at trying to be an influencer once because I thought it would be like cool to be flown to places, and now it just makes me want to like...
Yeah, and it's also really hard.
It's actually a lot of work.
I try to be good on my social media accounts. I'm like, guys, I don't know how to cut videos like that. So.
No, unless I had a team, there's no way I could do that. I tried to start a podcast once on public transport because I love public transport.
Wait, like recording it on public transport or about public transport?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd watch that.
Because I'm like such a nerd and I love public transport.
Really?
Love it. Like, I was going to call it Next Stop, and it was going to be like about different public mass transit systems because I'm such a nerd. And like, I still want to do that one day. So if anyone wants to help me produce that, let me know.
And don't steal her idea.
Don't steal my idea.
There's one influencer that I follow who's obsessed with trains, and I can't remember his name, but I'll have to show you.
Yeah, I love trains
because he like is just always watching these trains pull up, and he talks all about them.
Oh my
gosh. And he's actually really famous about it. So
I love that.
Maybe there would be something there.
I mean, I love mass transit and public transport. I love it. That's why I love London.
Yeah.
I mean, in Silicon Valley, you have to have a car to get anywhere.
I was going to say, do you think it comes from being American? Because I grew up in rural America, so it's like, there's no transport. There's no buses. I think, you're driving everywhere.
You're driving everywhere, and that in itself is like already creating inequalities. Yeah. Right. Anyways, I digress. Where was I? I'm like now like so locked in. Right, conviction. I'm like locked in on public transport. Right? Like, ooh, the tube. You have to have conviction about what you're going to do. I am notorious for having lots of ideas. My mother's always like, oh god, she's gardening now. Great, she's doing watercolors. Like, But Bloom is the only thing. It's the longest relationship I've ever been in. I mean, I want to say I would die for it. That's a bit too far, but I just have this unwavering conviction that this problem needs to be solved. And I think that has really helpfully informed what we do next. So, for example, if an acquisition offer came and it was the opportunity to put us in front of hundreds of millions, I would really take that seriously, right? Because that's in line with what we're trying to achieve. But similarly, when the going gets rough, and as Elon Musk, and again, I never thought I would quote Elon Musk, it's the only time you're gonna ever hear me do it, he once said being an entrepreneur is staring out into the abyss and eating glass. And I just went, felt that, heard that, because when it's times like those, you need to be so certain that this is worthy of building for, that this is the right thing to be doing. And so that's where the resilience, the grit, the perseverance comes from, is having that conviction. And sadly, I think not as many people have that now, because entrepreneurship has become like a career option, which is great. I love that. But also, it's kind of like, let me try this on for size, and if it doesn't work, then I'll try something else.
Yeah, that is, yeah, because I just said earlier before we started this that I was in New York.
Yep.
And I was there for Tech Week. And one of my biggest takeaways is there's so many young people building businesses. Like, they were still in uni and they were still doing this, but like, I wonder whether it is this trend of people just wanting to be a founder and not having that problem yet.
Yeah.
And so they like crave this founder life and this idea, but they just don't have that conviction yet. So I guess do you think that you can learn to have that problem and you can just start, you know, whether it's in uni, or should you wait until that spark or light bulb moment hits you? Maybe work a few corporate careers first, but I guess it all does depend on the person.
I think it helps to have some life experience. Yeah. I read a really interesting article recently about being a novelist. And I'm a huge reader. I'm on book 27 of the year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I read a lot.
It's been, what, 5-6 months?
Yeah. So like averaging a book a week.
Do you use Goodreads?
I do.
Okay, I'm gonna have to follow you on it, because I
please
need
do.
some more people that usually put stuff up there.
I actually also, I've started using Fable, female founded.
Okay.
It's, my gosh, their UI is very confusing, but
Yeah.
it's just a bit more pleasant. After Amazon bought Goodreads, they kind of killed it.
Yeah.
I love reading, and there was this essay which basically said, like, publishers are now chasing after young people to write novels. But actually, what makes a good novel, in my experience and in my opinion, is life. Like, heartbreak and heartache and stress and striving. These are the things that make a life and that make a story so rich. And so if you've not experienced those things, not to say that, you know, someone in uni hasn't, but it just becomes more difficult. So similarly, I think with founder life, I don't know about the resilience. Maybe you're young and dumb enough to just say, like,
Naive,
yeah, sorry.
Dumb too, dumb words.
Yeah. What's that, like, Wiz Khalifa song?
Young, dumb, and broke.
Yeah, young, dumb, and broke. Like, maybe that is okay. Because nowadays, like, there's no way I'm sleeping in a hostel with, like, 10 dudes just to go to Slush. Like, no. The idea of being at Slush makes, like, skin crawl, right? Like, I don't want to do that. So I do think that it's possible. And I think, I don't know. I don't have the answers. And I was not an entrepreneur in uni, so I can't really say. But I will say this. I do love that more people are giving it a try. Because there's something about having the courage to try, and hopefully in line with a problem worth solving, that I think is very valuable. And you get the burn marks, you get the scars from having tried, and I think that's worthwhile.
Yeah, and the goalposts move. Like, we already discussed that with how success changes and what the vision is and the values you hold with you throughout it all. So it is one of those things that, I guess it is easier than ever to start a business, I think, like in uni right now, because there's just so much out there. Tech, you don't even need, like, someone who knows how to code anymore to be able to just, like, make your first product. So
just use Lovable.
Yeah,
like,
right. There's so
like,
many that's happening. Yeah,
exactly. And I it's funny because I was just thinking about these friends that I have. They have a son that's at the University of Manchester, and he co-founded a business, and it was focused on students. So you're going to build for what you know more often than not, right? And so a lot of these student entrepreneurs are building for other students because that's what they know. Yeah. I do think there's value in going into a corporate world, a corporate setting, and being like, that's not working. Why are we still doing this, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get there. We'll see.
I did meet a few students who were building in New York, and they did say that starting with students, like, I asked why, and they also said that it's because they're the most adaptable and, like, open to try new things, because they have nothing else to lose. I mean, like they're about to graduate. They need,
Yeah.
to look for jobs, or they need to look for internships. They might try this new networking site because LinkedIn's not working for them. Like they're just very open to trying new things.
Yeah. Hungry.
Whereas maybe like 10, 15 years down the line, you're just more established, so you don't always need these different ideas that's happening.
Stay foolish, stay hungry.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's like what, Mark did with university students wanting to rate hot girls. They couldn't really go for like 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds to do that.
Sure.
And so looking ahead, I guess one of the last few questions is just, what does the next 5 years, is that too much? Because I never know what to ask, but what's the next 5 years look like? And what most excites you about the future of Bloom?
The next 5 years, gosh, no, you're completely right. It's like, what does your next 5 hours hold?
Yeah,
for you?
right.
I'm
Like you just never know what's going to change in the next 2 days. But
I think I'm supposed to meet. In the next 5 years, I would love for Bloom to be on the continent, the European continent, to be specific, uncovering this immigrant economy that is growing across Europe is so important to me. I think also, though, like, there's so many like side things for me that are really important. The fact that we should be getting more women into entrepreneurship, the fact that we should be doing more and building for a more equitable world. I will never. It's so funny. People ask me like, do you think you'd ever go into VC? Would you leave Bloom and like start a fund or join a fund? I could not be a VC because I just love people. I'll be like, that's brilliant. Like, you're cool. Like,
right.
Have all this
I'm
money.
the same way. I'm terrible at saying no. Like, I literally think everybody is interesting.
I'm like, you're so cool. Have $1 million.
You can do it.
Yeah. Like, if only that was the way that it worked, right? I hope that there will be a world where I can personally invest in cool founders that are building for the world that I want to live in. I want to be a mother. I very much want to be a mother. I actually, and people always find it really funny because I'm this like raging feminist, like, Nina, that like bra burning feminist. I do think, like I'm wearing one right now. But, my calling in life is to be a mother in some way, shape, or form. So I hope to start a family in the next 5 years. I also want to kind of rekindle my love for civil service in some way. So marrying maybe where we are with Bloom, advocating in immigration policy, working with larger NGOs or governments to create a more equitable world, I think would be really great. And for Bloom, I think every founder says, like, we've just scratched the surface, watch this space. I mean, we are just really at the starting line of what I think is going to be bigger than anything I could have ever imagined. And I remember speaking to someone very close to me who said, I think that Bloom is 10 times bigger than what you think it is. And that was in 2020. And now I'm realizing the opportunity that we have for everything beyond financial services. So I'm very excited to start to shine a light, uncover this immigrant economy that I keep talking about, and to grow the team. One of the things I'm most proud of is that we are an equal opportunity employer in the purest sense. So we have folks that are non-binary. We have folks, most of our team is first or second generation. We have hijabis, we have non-hijabis, we have, just a beautiful range of people. And I think I am the only one that has a Russell Group degree, which is something that, I'm almost like, let me give my degree back, because like I'm like standing out like a sore thumb. But they are so incredibly passionate and smart and driven, and they live outside the M25, and it's almost like data points to prove that talent exists beyond what we think is the norm, whether that's London, whether that's the Russell Group degrees, whether that's having worked at Google or Meta before joining a startup. I'm really excited to grow the team and see who will join this crazy journey that we're on.
Well, it's a busy next 5 years.
Yes.
I mean, I'm looking forward to it. And
I'm so
also,
excited.
the one thing that wasn't included in there is that maybe you might be a public transport influencer.
I mean, I hope so. Manifesting.
Yeah, add that into the really long
I think
list
that's what
of-
the kids call it, right? Gen Z. We're manifesting,
We're
my
manifesting.
podcast about mass transit. If anyone sees this and wants to help me produce that, let me know.
Maybe we can do an episode 2 on the train. That said, that's all the questions I had, but
Amazing.
it was a great chat. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. If you want to learn more about Bloom, find us at bloommoney.co. I can't afford bloommoney.com.
Okay.
It's such a startup life thing. Like, I
Yes.
can't afford it, so it's actually .co. Sorry to Columbia. 'Cause
In the description below.
yeah, in the description below, and reach out. I love answering questions and asking me stuff on public transport.